Hospitality isn't an industry, it's a virtue. There's no such thing as the kindness industry or the generous industry. Hospitality isn't a collection of services. It is the act of making people feel valued. It's something literally every person needs. And that's from Steve Fortunato. Okay. Our featured speaker today is Sara Drew. Sara serves as the outreach coordinator at First E. Among other things, she is also a Reiki master, hospital chaplain, and Unitarian Universalist ministerial candidate, working on her doctorate degree at Emory University's Candler School of Theology. Phew. Her current academic work centers on compassion and hospitality and how we might take better care of each other. So please join me in welcoming the fabulous Sara Drew.
Good morning. I don't know if it's just me, but I've been feeling like a little frenetic sort of energy this morning. Maybe it's the rain like kicking up some energy, I'm not sure. But we just take a moment. You can close your eyes or not, and just notice how you're feeling in your chair. Maybe adjusting as is helpful to you, sort of finding a balance between slumping and sitting up tall, finding that supported middle spot. Noticing, taking a moment, what's going on? Do you feel that frenetic energy or not? Notice the qualities of your breath and call hospitality to mind. You might think of a time when you were really thirsty, really hungry. Your spirit needed something, connection. And it was offered to you. Maybe you're thinking of your grandma's house as a child. Maybe you're thinking about a stranger offering you some form of sustenance. Maybe a song that you heard for the first time or the millionth time. Remember that as best you can, that moment of realizing that you were receiving exactly what you needed. Being fulfilled by that thing. That feeling of being taken care of. And maybe for you that required some release of your own ideas of independence or self-sustaining. You had to give in a little bit, perhaps, to be able to receive what you really needed from the other person or the universe. Just take one last moment there in that spot. Let that feeling of being taken care of wash over you. And, it wouldn't be the worst thing if you just stayed there and ignored every single thing else that I have to say. So feel free. Or maybe you'll come back to the room and I'll keep going. So first, why am I talking about hospitality? Why is that the center of my focus these days? And I think it's long been a focus of mine. But it has come to the forefront a lot lately, and that's because in my hospital chaplaincy position at Emory University Hospital in Midtown, the Emory Spiritual Health System really focuses on compassion. And we have this whole system. I talk about it a lot. There's two sort of coordinating systems that the first allows us to offer ourselves compassion, and then the second builds on the premise of that if we can offer ourselves self-compassion, then we'll be more capable of offering it to other people. And I think about that a lot. It's like literally the focus of my job entirely. How do we offer compassion to ourselves and then be able to offer it to others? But sometimes I think about it in what it, don't tell anybody, what it doesn't do, right? Like what does it leave unanswered? So if I go into someone's hospital room and they're having a terrible time for a million different reasons, not only in the hospital, but outside the hospital, right? Everything is wrong, maybe. And I am so compassionate. I feel for this person so deeply, and we really connect on like how awful this situation really is. There is something left. I'll give you an example. I was in the emergency room fairly recently with a man who had lost his wife of over 50 years unexpectedly. And he was devastated. And his immediate reaction to that was like, I got to get out of here. And I was like, I get that. Like, right? Like nobody wants to be in the emergency room. Certainly after being dealt the most devastating blow of your entire life, that's the last place you want to be, in this like cold room in this scenario. But I had noticed he was an older man. He was, a senior citizen, certainly. He had a cane. He didn't sit down the whole time I was there, and it was a very hot day, and he wanted to leave. And I said, can we figure out like how you might get home? And he's like, I really just want to walk. I said, how far is that? He said, it's probably about a mile or two. And I was like, in my heart, I was like, I have no authority to tell this man he cannot leave. And also, like, he cannot leave, right? Like, I can be compassionate, 125% compassionate for that situation. I still am compassionate, but like also he needed some hospitality, right? He needed a ride home. And so we worked through, the end of the story is not necessarily related to hospitality, but in some ways, I don't know, I sometimes I think I conjure things out of the air, because his neighbor just showed up to give him a ride home. She didn't know that they were there. She was like, hey, they're supposed to be here and they're not. And she sort of did some detective work to figure out where they were. And she just showed up in the emergency room. Talk about hospitality, right? And she just showed up. And I was relieved that he was going to be taken care of, right? She went, yeah, exactly. I would tell you her name, but it's probably a HIPAA violation. But I just hold her name in my head, and I just send her love all the time, because I don't know I don't know anything about her except that she showed up in that moment. But I just have to imagine that she's who I'm seeking to be, right? To know when I need to be somewhere that I could really offer some care and show up there, right? So there's like, to me, if I offer compassion, that's good. Compassion's good. And certainly in this world, we could use a whole lot more compassion. And also, there seems to be like something else. And another patient who I was talking to the other day, what I do when I go into a room is I say, hi, I'm Sara. I'm from Spiritual Health. And I say it that way because I want to take some of the religion out of it. Because as many of you can imagine, like, entering with like a religious air about me is not always well received. And so I try to tell the truth still and say I'm from Spiritual Health, but a lot of people are like, what's that? And that what's that seems easier and better and more manageable than like an overtly religious introduction. But in this moment, the patient was not happy to hear that. She said, spiritual, I don't need spiritual. All you people can talk about all this spiritual stuff, and I'm not the one that needs anything spiritual. You're the one that needs something spiritual. I need some help. And I was like, exactly. Like that's what I've been thinking about, right? Like, yeah. She's like, I am completely well-grounded in my own spirituality, and that is not my problem right now, And again, I can give her compassion, but she was like, I'm about to be discharged from this hospital and I have nowhere to go. Spirituality is not going to help me have a pillow tonight and a warm bed, And that's nothing realer has ever been said, right? Like that's the truth. And so how much ever compassion we can offer is wonderful, but also it feels like there's it's almost like compassion in action that hospitality can be. And if we think about this like hospitality industry, like Jan has been mentioning a lot this morning, right? You think about like the best hotel you've ever been in, or like the best restaurant or whatever. Yeah, that's great, but is that it? Is that the real hospitality that we're seeking to offer other people? Like, maybe that offers some spiritual care, but I think it's a whole lot deeper than that. My sort of path through hospitality has taken me eventually to the term radical hospitality. And radical hospitality was not, those words were not used by Saint Benedict, but it's like sort of attributed to him. The idea of radical hospitality is attributed to Saint Benedict, who was a leader of a monastery. And he required that his monks in this monastery allow any visitor in. And so anybody who came to the door of the monastery was welcomed in. And the radical piece of it is that they were not supposed to invite the strangers in order to invite them into their very strict regimen. It wasn't like the monk said, sure, you can come in, but you got to follow our rules, like some of the more religious soup kitchens and things that you can imagine today, right? Like, sure, we're going to give you dinner, but first you got to sit through this service, right? It wasn't like that. St. Benedict said, no, we invite them in and we do as they do. So it's almost like turning yourself into the recipient of the other, right? And that's used a lot today in congregational talk, right? Like that's how a lot of people talk about spiritual communities and forming spiritual communities, is that you have to not only be this like generous and welcoming person, right? Serving coffee and offering whatever there is to offer, but you have to allow yourself to be changed by the other in order to allow for this radical hospitality. And if you think of that in a hotel or a restaurant or something, there's no way, right? That's not radical hospitality. You're not going to go in and be like, actually, I think you should do it this way, you know? Maybe they'll do it for you and you know, bite their tongue, but they're not being changed by your ideas. We're not co-creating in this like capitalistic version of hospitality. In radical hospitality, it's a co-creation of this future. And so in my work on hospitality, I've been like searching for a definition, like the right one. Like the first one doesn't seem right. The second one doesn't seem to encompass it entirely either. Does it have to do with like shelter, food, water, clothing? Like, is that the only version of hospitality? Or is there like a hospitality of spirit that we can offer? And so this book has become my favorite thing currently. It's called Discovering the Hidden Spiritual Power of Invitation and Welcome, Hospitality, the Sacred Art. And it's by Reverend Nanette Sawyer. And her definition of hospitality is a combination of receptivity, which seems like the St. Benedict version, like receptivity, right? I'm open to what you bring. Reverence and generosity. And generosity seems like the more common first interpretation of hospitality, right? Like, I'm going to offer you food. I'm going to offer you shelter in the way that I can be most generous. But so that there's that reverence in there. And so I've been really sitting with that reverence. How can we be receptive, generous, and reverent of other people? And can we do that in an exchange, in a moment, in a conversation, without having the opportunity to have them over for dinner or to stay over for the night or create an experience, right? Is there a way that we can do it in this limited amount of time and resources, perhaps, too? And that has me thinking about, before I moved to Atlanta, just the last 5 years or so ago, I was a yoga teacher. And it was an interesting position because, in terms of this hospitality, because I was a business owner. And so needed people to pay money to have the business survive. And also, I wasn't just teaching yoga as stretching. I was teaching the philosophical yoga and the physical yoga that we, often bring to mind. Bending over, touching our toes, whatever the pose that you bring to mind when you think about it, it has more to do with when the muscles are moving in this particular way. If you're practicing that philosophical version of yoga. And so most of it, if I could tie it up in like one little nutshell for you, is like most of those positions are not comfortable, right? Maybe someone's like, oh, that really feels good. Like this particular pose really feels good. But most of the time, and because of the varying poses, we're trying to like test ourselves to see like, how can you manage the discomfort of this particular pose? And each particular pose has a different emotion behind it that you're sort of dealing with. So, for instance, back bends, right? So if you just imagine, I'm not gonna go crazy here, but I'll just give you like a little visual cue, right? If you put your hands on your back and you just like literally bend back, right? My spine is going the opposite way than we would usually go, a back bend. You're like literally opening your heart. But the idea in this philosophical practice of yoga is like, you're not just literally and physically opening your heart. You're actually practicing having an open heart. So there's no distinction between those two things in yoga poses. You think of the warrior poses. They're named warrior poses because those are poses of power. And so if they're really uncomfortable to you, then you think about what's with me and this like discomfort with being in power, What are my conflicts? It gives you this way into sort of figuring out what's going on with you. And I think about that in terms of receptivity because I was this business owner, right? I want people to come in, I want them to pay, and also I'm really challenging them on these things. Like people will come in and be like, it's too hot in here. And I'd be like, yeah, it is hot in here. Like I'm also very hot. That's true, and also we're still going to do yoga in this really hot space. And I luckily was in a position where it was okay with me if people weren't ready for that and they never came back. I had to manage that within myself too, right? I had to be receptive to that for myself. But there's not many spaces like that, right? Where we're like, okay, we're going to try to work on this thing with each other, and it's probably not going to be comfortable, but we're going to do it anyway, and we're going to like work through it. It's certainly not like that in the hospital. Because it's very one-sided. An experience in a hospital is very one-sided. But I do think that our spiritual communities offer us that opportunity if we take it, right? We can ignore each other. We can bite our tongues. We can yell at each other and leave, or we can consider like, oh, what that person is doing right now is really, making me anxious or making me frustrated or making me, think about this bad relationship I had with XYZ 20 years ago, right? Like we can reckon with those things or not. And I think that if we bring hospitality to the forefront, we have this opportunity not only to be generous, which I think most of us among the three, that comes most easily, not only to be receptive, because among the three, I think most of us have some practice with that too, particularly if we've had kids ever around us in our lives. But there's that reverence. So if we can get past that like internal, like, oh, this person's really challenging me place, hopefully we can get to the reverence, which is, oh, I can see more clearly now that person's way, that person's interest, that person's ideas have value. And not only do I see that they have value, but I am reverent of that value that they bring to this community. And so I'm not jumping in to cut them off. I'm not jumping to change the way they do things. I'm not assuming that my way is the only way. I am much more interested in this co-creation that we can do together, right? What do I bring? What do you bring? What does that look like if we really challenge each other to be our best selves? What could we offer the world, right? So where do we go with that? I think that where we go with that, I think of it in terms of existentialism, right? And existentialism, you all know better than me, often gets a very self-centered rap, right? It's what do you think is most important? What do you think is the way forward, which is really important, right? That we're not to contrast it to a more traditional religious situation, right? We're not dictating this is what you should think. You have to figure that out for yourself. But when you put that in terms of a community, then how does that play itself out? And I think the way forward there is that we not only see ourselves as an individual but we see ourselves as a collective together as well. And so that's where the hospitality comes into the picture. How can we be really firm and really true to ourselves and follow our own interests and ideas and beliefs, and also make room to reverence the other? That's where I am in the situation. And if we think about that in terms of justice, right, there has to be a hard line somewhere, right? Sure, we can co-create together, but we're not going to be cruel and unusual, discriminatory. We're not going to go that far. And so where can we be better at sort of fleshing out that middle ground of how much we allow the other while holding our firm boundaries to protect ourselves and people who have less agency? And I'm just going to wrap this up by inviting you into one more little thought project here. So again, if you want to make yourself comfortable, maybe check back in and notice if anything's changed. I want you to call to mind a person whom you've had a less than friendly interaction. Someone who annoys you. You don't have to go to this person all my life has been, you don't have to go to the end of the spectrum. Just, a baby step of a person where you're oh, that person is really rubs me the wrong way. If there's a particular situation you can focus on, all the better. Remember the setting or the event, whether it was your workplace, your place of worship, book club. Visualize the last place you saw this person. The details will help you get in touch with the memories and emotions. In your imagination, remember how the person looks, dresses, does or doesn't approach you. Now turn your attention to yourself. Notice how you feel physically while remembering this person. Notice any bodily physical sensations. Are you clenching your teeth? Do you have a queasy stomach? Is your heart beating fast? Whatever it is, if there is anything. Begin to name the emotional states that come up. Would you say that you're frustrated? Would you say that you have some fear, some confusion, whatever it is, sadness, shock? See if you can name what you're feeling. If your mind wanders away because you're uncomfortable, that makes sense. You'll just return to visualizing the physical place in which you know this person from. Once you're reconnected, you can return to contemplating your own physical and emotional reactions. If one emotion rises to the forefront or seems particularly potent, focus on it more directly for a while. And follow the trail of thoughts that are connected to it. Ask yourself, where is this emotion coming from? What am I afraid of? Why do I feel so sad? Whatever the emotion is. Allow yourself to fully witness those feelings and emotions, and allow yourself to have some compassion around your reaction. As you practice receptivity and reverence toward yourself, your awareness may expand, and your adversarial feelings may begin to loosen their grip within you. If and when this happens, you can take the next step and turn your receptive awareness toward your adversary. Can you perceive a calm, collected, spiritual presence? And as your time begins to draw to a close, notice any changes in how you feel here and in relation to that situation that you had been exploring. See if you can use a few last breaths in this position to shed any of that uncomfortable, discomfort, negative emotions, and take in that compassion. You can take your time to come back to the room, and I'll just say, I think that the ground of all of the compassion and hospitality and any other inner work is we can only offer other people what we are capable of offering others. And so it works like that with compassion. If I give myself compassion, I'm more likely to be able to offer it to others. And it works like that with hospitality too. If I give myself hospitality, I'm more capable of offering it to others. And so think about how hard you are on yourself if you deny yourself food, water, comfort, rest, whatever it is, spiritual inspiration, and first focus on allowing as much of that as you need for yourself, which will in turn just automatically make you more capable of offering it to others. Thank you so much for being with me this morning.